Members of council, if I can please have you come into the council chambers. Yeah, I know the official elevator is not working, so you'll have to walk a few steps. Members of council, if I can please have you come to the council chambers. Nine, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Members of council, if I can please have you come to the council chambers. Members of council, if I can please have you come to the council chambers. Okay, members of council, we have quorum. Can I please ask you to take your seats? Members, please take your seats. I will call this meeting to order. Would you please stand for the national anthem? Please remain standing for a moment of silence, and during this time, remember Anne Borua and Father Cecil Zinger. Thank you. We acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. For the benefit of those who are connected to the internet, the City Clerk has posted the agenda materials for today's meeting at toronto.ca/council. Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, I want to rise on behalf of all of my colleagues and all the members of the Toronto City staff that are here and right across the reaches of our city and the residents of Toronto, just to say a few words about Anne Bura. Anne was an absolutely wonderful person, and any of you that had the opportunity, and I think many of you did, to work with her, knew how great she was. Her husband and her two daughters are here today, along with many members of the staff that are in the room, and will very much miss her. She was a real and genuine person, spending 16 years working with us. One of the greatest things about Anne, and I said it to her, is she knew how to speak in English, not in Bildese. She didn't always come down and confuse you through what she was saying. She tried to make sure you understood what it was she was saying, and her staff, to her great respect, talk now in simple English and explain those very, very difficult rules and regulations that they have so we understand it and can do a great job. And she's left behind here not just a wonderful family, but in her absence from work, trying to fight her sickness lately, her staff, which learn from her and do an absolutely fantastic job. I spoke to Anne about 5-6 months ago on the street. I was walking when she was off in her second illness, and I bumped into her on Yonge Street. And she was her same old self, as much as she was fighting her battle with cancer, and I know how difficult that is, having lived with people that have been through that terrible fight, and in the end she didn't win it, which is very sad. She was upbeat, she was positive, she was glad to see us, she was just still happy being alive and fighting on the battle and hoping she could come back to work. So, and I do know that she did a wonderful job after coming here from the province, going back and representing us with her great knowledge and respect and rising to that wonderful position and very important position she had here as our chief building official. So it is with great sadness that I do recognize her passing today and wish on behalf of all of my members of council, all the city staff, all the people right across Toronto and all the people that she's worked with, our condolences to the family and our very best wishes. And thank you for letting her share that time with us.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. This special meeting of council has been scheduled for the following purposes: to fill the vacancy in the office of Councillor Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale, by considering and appointing a candidate to the office in accordance with the procedures adopted by City Council at its October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2017 meeting, and to introduce and enact bylaws for this special meeting. Members of council, this is a special meeting, separate from the regular meeting that starts next week. Under council's procedures, no other business items such as notices of motions may be introduced. This rule cannot be waived. Are there any declarations of interest at this time? Are there any petitions at this time? We will now review and confirm the order paper. Once the order paper has been approved by council, any change will need a 2/3 vote. Council will recess for lunch between 12:30 and 2, and will recess between 6 and 6:30 p.m. All those in favor of adopting the order paper, recorded vote.
The motion to adopt the order paper carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Members, I will now ask the city clerk to explain the process for today's meeting.
Members, City Council has adopted procedures for this meeting. These procedures were distributed with the agenda as part of my report on the Ward 28 vacancy. Each of the candidates who have completed a consent of nominee and a declaration of qualification and provided personal identification that I deemed satisfactory may address council for 5 minutes. The speaking order will be determined by lot. I will place the names of all candidates on equal-sized pieces of paper in a container and randomly draw the names. After each candidate has spoken, each member of council can ask the candidate one question. Members may speak if they wish once all candidates have spoken and all questions have been dealt with. After members of council have spoken, council will vote by ballot. I will review the balloting process with you at the appropriate time. Upon conclusion of the balloting, I will declare to be appointed the candidate receiving the votes of more than 1/2 of the number of members of council present and voting, or the candidate selected by lot in the event that 2 remaining candidates were tied. At the end of today's meeting, City Council will enact a bylaw to confirm the appointment of the successful candidate to the office of Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale, for the remainder of the term of the present council. Members, my report, item CC 33.1, lists the persons who have submitted nominations for Councillor Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale. The following persons have subsequently withdrawn their names from consideration: Brian Bissonnette, Stephen Devine, Suzanne Kemper, Faiza Malik, Jairaj Tevasagayam.
Councillor Holliday, you have a procedure motion on this matter. As the motion is lengthy, I will ask the city clerk to display it on the screen.
Good morning, Speaker. I do. That the following persons who have signified in writing that they are legally qualified to hold the office of councillor and consented to accept the office if they are appointed to fill the vacancy of councillor, Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale, shall be considered for appointment to fill such vacancy. And there are 31 names.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Members, the city clerk will now draw the names of the candidates to determine a speaking order. Then the city clerk, staff would distribute copies of the speaking order shortly, and the speaking order will also be available on the city's website at toronto.ca/council.
Members, the first candidate is Murtaza Ibrahim. Samina Alim. Randall Panzer. Aftab Arif. John Porter. Roland Olivier. Kevin Clarke. Susan Gapka, Jonathan Hughes. Taras Rachaev. Patrick Qui-Li. Alison Rose. Eric Wyczenski. Olli Calderon. Rona Bailey, Brian Schulz, Louis Molnar, Eric Murphy, Masudur Laskar, Joel McCallum, Kevin Vuong, John Cladidis, Sarah Kitab, Kimberly King, Michael Creek, Fenton Jagdeo, Lucy Troisi, Julia Volpe, Robert Patrick Wright, Jonathan Gallagher, and Robert Thompson.
Okay, if we can give the staff a minute or two so they can circulate the order.
Oops, sorry, I just dropped your mouse. Do we have it?
Yeah, we're just printing
Okay.
it out.
Speaker.
We just want to make sure that you have a copy and the clerk has a copy before
Yeah,
we
we'll
start.
just make 2 copies. Yeah.
Okay, members, we will now proceed with the appointment for Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale. Madam Clerk, would you please read out the name of the first candidate?
First candidate is Murtaza Ibrahim.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mayor John Tory, and members of the Council. My name is Murtaza Ibrahim. I'm a resident of Melvin in Northeast Scarborough, but I worked in Ward 28 for 6 years. If I'm elected for this appointment, my immediate responsibility would be to spend a couple of weeks to get up to speed with Ward 28 affairs, to be able to serve the ward and its people. As this is a short-term position, I would focus on ongoing matters so that needs of residents in this ward are addressed and taken care of. At the end of the term, in November 2018, I hope to gain wisdom and be a better serving citizen of Toronto. If anything, my efforts would be to make Ward 28 a better place and contribute to the council during the term of office. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next candidate is Samina Alim. Samina Alim. Samina Alim. Not present. The next candidate is Randall Pantzer. Randall Pantzer.
Thank you.
I have donated blood 14 times. I have sponsored a child in World Vision for 8 years. I have given 8 children a normal mouth through a charity called Operation Smile. I have given some people back their sight through a charity called SIVA, which is based in Vancouver. They do cataract surgeries in the third world at $50 a shot. In 1992, I cured my aunt of lung cancer with something called Pau d'Arco, which is in the health food stores. It is inner tree bark from the rainforest in Brazil. I hope that the Toronto police will stop raping women. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Aftab Arif.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, Madam Speaker, Mayor John Tory, and the respectable members of the Council. First of all, I would like to pay my deepest condolences to the City Council, residents of Toronto, and most importantly, family and friends of Ms. Pam McConnell for their great loss. May she rest in peace. My name is Aftab Arif, and I'm a resident of this great city. I'm a Torontonian. I went to the University of Toronto to do international development studies, and I'm still in the process of finishing it since I had to take time off. In 2012, I had the opportunity to participate in an international volunteer project in Cape Town, South Africa. In 2013, I did a similar project in Dominican Republic, helping to rebuild communities where residents are less fortunate than most of us, or maybe some of us. I will let you look at the statistics as to how many of us in the world are fortunate enough to even afford basic necessities. The need to do more, to lend a hand to the people who need it the most, made me pursue a career in this field, international development. Working as a security supervisor in Toronto, I got the opportunity to learn about everyday problems Torontonians face, ranging from issues like reliable transit to affordable housing, public parks, as well as community recreational centers. We need to especially focus on affordable housing, more beds in shelter homes, and more shelter homes are needed. This was the vision of Pam McConnell as she worked tirelessly to achieve these objectives. As in the morning session of October 2nd, Madam Speaker said about Pam McConnell, and I quote, "She was a strong woman, best remembered for her role in advocating poverty reduction and the revitalization of Regent Park neighborhood, end quote. If I elected today, I want to assure all of you that I will continue to strive for fulfilling the list of Pam McConnell's list of things she had left for us. This list was shared by Council Fletcher on October 2nd in the morning session of this council, from which building more affordable housing and tackling poverty and making sure that the Regent Park gets completed were some of the prominent goals. Among other items, community development is very close to my heart. I have been able to dedicate my time and resources for helping others throughout my student life. In order for me to accomplish this lifetime goal through international development studies, I have been empowered to provide community development initiatives around the world. And I request that you please empower me to do the same in Toronto in Ward 28. As the saying goes, that charity starts at home, and as a Torontonian, my first priority should be Toronto. I have seen this great city prosper and develop over the last decade. However, there is still work to be done. Affordable housing, more beds in shelter homes, and career training for youth and newcomers are some of the major concerns facing our city. Luckily, Pam McConnell had worked tirelessly for these pressing concerns. I will make sure that I continue her legacy to provide the best public service possible as I serve the remainder of the term for a short term of 1 year. I would like to ask the member of this council to vote for the right candidate, not based upon the norms and impressions, but for his or her drive to work hard that Pam McConnell had started, advocated, and stood for. As we all know that she was an outstanding councillor when it came to looking after the underprivileged Torontonians. I want to continue working with the same list that Pam McConnell left us until all of the items on the list are achieved. I don't think anyone could ever come up with a better list than McConnell's list for Ward 28 and the City of Toronto. This list is perfectly aligned with present needs of the city. I strongly admire and believe in her vision for the city and want to see her work continue until its completion in the coming days. Although Toronto has been economically benefited from infrastructure, innovation, entertainment industry, and education sector, but it's about time we shifted our focus towards empowering Torontonians with affordable housing, more shelter homes, and further the government-sponsored youth programs. Our mission should be to tackle youth poverty and provide more opportunities to future Torontonians, and in order to do that, we need to allocate resources accordingly. In 2015 and 2016, the studies have ranked Toronto to be the youth poverty capital of Canada. My mission, if elected, would be to make sure I find solutions and ways for tackling this problem. I would ensure, with the help of this council, that we find ways to address youth poverty and bring more programs to reach out to young Torontonians with government-sponsored programs. I would strive to achieve affordable housing, more beds in shelter homes, and more shelter houses. This was the mission of Pam McConnell, and I would not rest until I achieve some results regarding this in the short time of 1 year given as a councillor. I have a personal example that I want to relate here today. I used to live at Parliament in Dundas in 2006 and 7, and used to work at Jarvis and Carlton.
Thank you, sir. Your 5 minutes is up.
Okay. Thank you for your kind attention, and I hope that you vote for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is John Porter.
Okay, sir, you have 5 minutes.
Gracious good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Lady Chairman, councillors. I would very much like to have Pam's job. I know it's one of the most difficult areas in the city. You have a lot of things that need to be addressed. You have a burgeoning population. The census is reporting that we have only so many people. I've walked around this area and I've looked at the buildings and looked at the numbers of people and the traffic jams, and I think we have 3 times what the census currently says. I think the problem is very, very serious. I know we have another serious problem with the island. It was unusable, virtually unusable, until the end of August. And That is part of a problem that is going to continue. And I would like to see if I can't discover a solution for that. One of the things I'd like to suggest is that we extend 2 existing causeways, or part thereof, one from the Humber Park and one from the Leslie Spit. And we create a backwater, a breakwater, and to justify those costs, I would also run a roadway, and underneath it I'd run a subway. And that way, Toronto can finally have a ring road of its own. Every major city in Europe and North America has a ring road. I'm late getting here because I took the parking lot. I was 1 hour coming from Agincourt. And I think there are a lot of people who are very frustrated. I know you'd like us to stop driving our cars and get on the Red Rocket, but the Red Rocket is packed. We haven't completed our subways. We've got a lot of things that we need to do now. We cannot stop producing cars because people are car crazy. They love them, they want them, and they need them. And that's where our money comes from. It's that simple. I would love to honor Pam by having her position. I went down to what I thought was her office. It's turned into a kitchen appliance sales office because I wanted to talk to her people and see what was going on. I have worked down on Richmond Street a couple of times, and I am a little bit aware of the area. But I look very much forward to the challenge of sitting on council and working with you. I am very cognizant and aware of rules of Roberts. I have sat on boards of directors, and I have been congratulated for all the work and my input on those. And in fact, I was cautioned at one of the meetings. They said that whatever it is you're doing, you have to stop, because we cannot accommodate 3,400 people in a single venue. There's nothing available to us at that time. So I do my work and then some. I have worked for the food bank and various other charities. And I am a member of the Governor General's Horse Guards. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
The next candidate is Roland Olivier. Roland Olivier. Roland Olivier. Not present. The next speaker is Kevin Clarke.
Okay. Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I must thank my little boss up there. Yes, you, with that striped shirt. Because you're the one that brings me here. And you are the one I serve. As I challenge John Tory for the mayor of Toronto's job, it is that child that inspired me. Now, John wants you to think about Doug Ford. But the fact is, Doug Ford is a half-time mayoral candidate. He hasn't even finished one mayoral race. I am a 5-time mayoral candidate. I have faced Lassman, Miller, Ford, but yet, John, you would not face me. Why? Because you know you can't beat me democratically. You can beat Doug Ford because he has the same progressive conservative party that you used to lead. But you know, John Tory, if you let the media promote us equally, you don't stand a hope in hell in beating me unless you change your social policy. And that brings us to why I'm here today. I was here on June 28th, and at that time I was a resident in Paul Ainsley Ward. I did what John Tory wouldn't do with Toronto Community Housing. I did it with Canada's largest landlord, Capri Property. I filed a large amount of complaints with the city, and I send a copy of each complaint to you, John Tory. But yet, I was ordered evicted, thrown to the streets, not even given the rights as a dog. They said I had a disability that possesses me to write my name on election campaign signs and post them on the public roadway. And that disability was grounds for the Ontario government to order me homeless. And I took hell, and I couldn't fight. For a full year, I fought. And when the eviction order came, I sent you another letter, and I said, John, don't let them take my life. I also sent a copy to Paul. And I also sent a copy to Gary Crawford when Capri in their ward had so much problems that Gary Crawford says we will take them to court. But yet Gary Crawford didn't take them to court. I had to take them to court. So on August 18th, I was thrown on the streets in Ward 28, and I was left to die. And today I'm proud to announce that I'm no longer a homeless man. I have a home, and I live in Toronto Centre. That's the provincial riding of Toronto Centre, and I am the provincial candidate for member of provincial parliament in Toronto Centre. But how did I get a home? I stayed out of the despicable shelter system of the city of Toronto, and that's why I found a home in less than 2 months. I wish to address the issue of Toronto community housing and the lack of repairs and the maintenance in Toronto community housing. That's why I wish to be the councillor for Ward 28. I wish to address the homelessness in Ward 28, the extensive large amount of homelessness, and I wish to address an issue that's very disturbing: public drug addiction, public alcoholism, and public disobedience that lead to so much violence. Those are the issues I will address as Ward 28 City Councillor. I have been in Ward 28 for the majority of my homeless days, which spanned 10 to 12 years before I found housing for 6 years, until I was thrown in the street for standing up to those who did not maintain and repair their property according to the standards of law. Currently, I am one of 19 people in the province of Ontario that is legally eligible to be the next Premier of Ontario, because I am the interim leader of the Ontario People's Political Party. I inspire hope. I can give opportunity. I can give guidance to your youth, and I can deal with the issues of drugs, alcoholism, and the disrepair in housing. And I believe that is what's needed in Ward 28 currently. God bless the soul of Councillor Pam McConnell.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have a question for you. Councillor Fletcher.
Good morning, Mr. Clarke. I just wanted to ask people that live in Ward 28, are you planning or would you run in the council election next fall?
I am currently living in Ward 27, which is a block out of Ward 28.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
But I am in the provincial the provincial riding of Toronto Centre. If I am appointed today to City Councillor, I am also the provincial candidate in Toronto Centre, and I am also seeking to deal with a federal seat in Scarborough Agincourt. So I would not run again for City Councillor in Ward 28. I would hope that after my term, the mayor would appoint me the head of Toronto Community Housing to fix Toronto Community Housing, and at that period of time, I would feel I would do a great asset to the people, and then I would withdraw possibly from the mayor's race so I can do something that will affect a large amount of people.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, God is with us.
Oh, Councillor Karagianis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Clarke, how many positions have you registered and run for in the last, let's say, 10 years?
In the last 10 years, I was in Ottawa, Vanier to address the issue of children's rights and the death of Caitlin Sampson. I was in Simcoe North to face Conservative leader Patrick Brown. I faced Jack Layton federally. I have faced, but I think that's before the 10 years, I have faced Rob Ford. I was supposed to face John Tory the last election, but he would not face me. In total, I have ran 5 times for the mayor of Toronto's post since I was a homeless man, 9 times provincially, 4 times federally, and I am currently the interim leader of the Ontario People's Political Party and its chief financial officer. So in total, you're looking at 5 municipally, 9 provincially, that's 14, so 18 times.
Is that a Guinness World Book of Records?
No, it is not. That is owned by John Turnell, right? I believe that if we had the financial resources, we would have been elected a long time ago. But most of those elections I ran as a homeless man in the city of Toronto.
Thank you.
God is with us. Is that it?
That's it. There's no more questions. Thank you.
Everyone have a beautiful, wonderful, and blessed day, and respect my boss, and that's the child.
The next candidate is Susan Gapka.
Hague. Good day, distinguished councillors. I begin by acknowledging that Toronto is built upon the traditional Indigenous territory of the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe and the Mississaugas of the New Credit. I am Susan Gapka. Many of you already know, are familiar with my record of getting results, of political experience, of my coming out journey of diversity. Many of us have worked together to improve our city on affordable housing, poverty reduction, the Toronto drug strategy, public health, and world pride. If I could just have some of your attention, please. I've waited a long time to do this. Thank you very much. I have proven that I can work with you on difficult, often challenging yet ultimately rewarding solutions which will bring people together for consensus on moving us forward to build a more inclusive city. There are a few here unfamiliar with my accomplishments. So I direct your attention to the package submitted to the city clerk, my campaign flyer, hopefully you got it, my information sheet, and a series of published articles. I first met Pam McConnell in 2000 when I was working in Councillor Olivia Chow's office. That is when I discovered my passion for politics at City Hall, which motivated me to pursue a degree in public policy and administration at York University. I was appointed at that time to the Access, Equity and Human Rights LGBT Advisory Committee, and that's when Pam invited me to join the Status of Women Committee, which she chaired at the time. Now, Pam McConnell was an inspiration to me and many of us here in Toronto. She helped empower me to live my true identity, and I am the woman that I am, that you see before me today, because of those early political experiences here at City Hall and Pam's gentle yet persistent encouragement and support. My dear city councillors, we have an enormous responsibility here today. The number of 36, now 32 candidates have applied to take care of Ward 28 and the citizens who elected Pam to represent them. Many of us could bring a heap of endorsements from people across the city, and I suppose each of us believe that we are the best candidate to fill the position and to continue Pam's work. This is not a caretaking position. In less than a year, Ward 28 will elect their next representative. Today, my friends, I believe you have a different calling. Hold a mirror up to our city. 50% of our population are visible minorities. People speak dozens of different languages. More than half of us are women. 13% of Torontonians identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans, and the only LGBTQ high school in our city, located in my home church of Metropolitan Community Toronto, teachers are reporting every year they see more and more youth who identify as trans. And let me add non-binary to that. This emerging trend is consistent across Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. City Council should mirror our city, and I believe that a world-class city like Toronto should reflect the true diversity of our population. But it doesn't. 44 councillors, 13 are women, 14% of council are visible minorities, and only one I know of identifies as a member of the LGBTQ community. No council members are openly trans, and none anywhere in Canada. My friends, you have an opportunity today to take a step forward to a more equitable council, one which is more inclusive of the diversity of the experiences that make this city so vibrant and unique. You have an opportunity to show the rest of Canada that the world, everyone is included here. Remember Toronto's motto, diversity our strength. When you vote, vote for results, vote for experience, vote for diversity. Vote for Susan Gapka. Thank you, City Council.
Thank you. We do have a question for you, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. Because you live in this community, Susan, and have been very active, and there will be 2 new seats created if our changes go through in the elections boundaries, in the electoral boundaries for next year. Would you be putting your name forward in 2018 to be on the ballot in either of those 2 seats?
The circumstances that bring us here today for this meeting are very unfortunate, and remember, had not anticipated that there'd be a vacancy in Ward 28, so I saw that as perhaps an opportunity to move forward. If successful, I will give you my word that I will not run as a municipal candidate in Toronto in the next election. I like to think my word is pretty strong, and but if not successful, I would see that as an opportunity for me to go to the residents of one of the wards in my neighborhood of Toronto Centre and to see if they would be ready to vote for Susan Gapka on Election Day.
And if you were councillor...
Sorry, Councillor Fletcher, you only have one question.
Only one. I'm sorry
Just
about
one
that.
question.
I had more
Thank
for
you.
That's okay.
Are there any further questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The next candidate is Jonathan Hughes.
Good morning, Mayor Tory. Good morning, councillors. I'm sure many of you have already made a predetermined decision coming into this meeting, but I'd like you to stop for just 5 minutes and be open to the possibility of choosing the best candidate that is in front of you today. My name is Jonathan Hughes, and I'm asking for your vote for this appointment. I wish we were here under better circumstances, and my heart goes out to all who knew and loved Councillor McConnell, and respect for, I know, her family that are with us today. My favourite memory is during the 2014 election campaign. I stood alongside Councillor McConnell for the position, and our paths crossed often, almost like a sixth sense. We always seemed to choose the same street when we were campaigning. What I remember most was how she treated me. She always treated me with respect. I know our views were not dissimilar on so many issues, and there was a sense of knowing as we always agreed to venture in our different directions and along different streets. I know that Councillor McConnell's legacy is here to stay. But I've also heard others talk to the prospect of being a caretaker. With all respect, that's not why we are here today. We are here to appoint the right individual who will be a strong advocate for the residents and businesses of Ward 28. I'm not here to preserve Councillor McConnell's legacy. I'm here to build on it. I'm not here to maintain Councillor McConnell's legacy. I'm here to grow it. We need someone who will be there for the residents of the islands when there's floods, will work on density and low-income issues in St. Jamestown. We need someone who will build an extraordinary, sustainable community along our waterfront, yet continue to champion the revitalization in Regent Park. We need someone who will protect the heritage of the St. Lawrence district, but also ensure we develop new parks and new art in places like Corktown. That's no caretaker role. That's the role of a strong advocate for the year ahead. Now, I've also heard a lot of statements about endorsements, and I want to talk about real endorsements today. The over 2,400 ward residents who in the last election voted for me. Those are real endorsements. Residents who believe I will be the best to represent them. That doesn't even take into account the many doors that we knocked on, who we know we would have got their vote, A, if we had ranked ballots, and B, if Pam McConnell had chosen not to run. So, of course, there's many issues. I want to highlight one. Councillor McConnell, of course, cared most about the poverty reduction strategy, and housing in particular. She herself was a tireless advocate. She lived in cooperative housing for many years of her life, and she was very active in that movement. It's one of the best sources of safe and affordable housing that we can have in our city. So who can be best to live that legacy and help it grow? Someone who's called co-op housing their home for over 20 years. Someone who was at the Cooperative Housing Federation conference this year on the main stage talking about how we look after our members on low income and how we continue to develop and build new co-ops. I am the best to help on that legacy, both in housing, poverty reduction, and the many issues that face our residents and businesses. So here's my call to action. All of you have this paper in your package. I ask you to pull it out and take a look at it. You'll find that true advocate, but you'll also find someone who's a facilitator, who can bring people and neighborhoods together, a university lecturer on change and leadership, a union steward, and someone trusted to be on the bargaining committee, and a marathoner. 12 times, I've got endurance and I get results. I can appeal to everybody to help this council. I'm socially progressive, but also fiscally responsible. So surprise yourself. I ask you, at least in this first round of voting, don't choose a caretaker, choose the best person for the job. Choose the best person to advocate for the people of Ward 28. I am that person. My name is Jonathan Hughes, and I hope I can count on your vote today. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
The next candidate is Taras Rakchayev. Taras Rakchayev. Taras Rakchayev. Not present. The next candidate is Patrick Qui-Li.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, councillors, my name is Patrick Qui-Li, and I thank you for the time to speak today. Ward 28 is most certainly dynamic and diverse, and I sincerely look forward to working with its many community and business leaders to continue the exemplary work conducted by Councillor McConnell to build a healthy, prosperous, safe, and sustainable ward. After a 15-year career in public service where I have served Canadians internationally, in my community, and in the province of Ontario, it is my hope to be appointed as the councillor for Ward 28. I believe my professional and community experience has given me exceptional leadership, interpersonal, and organizational skills, as well as the ability to bring numerous and diverse stakeholders together in common vision to achieve results. More specifically, my experience has given me a skill set ideal to work collaboratively with you, members of council, and with the Ward 28 community. Specifically, I would be looking to work with those community leaders to ensure efficient value-for-money city government, community safety, responsible city planning, poverty reduction and economic development, moving forward with and ensuring to maintain and enhance Toronto's world-class transit system, as well as ensuring its affordability, working also to ensure that Ward 28 interests are represented in the ongoing discussions with Sidewalk Labs, a portion of which will be built in the ward. Over the course of my career as a diplomat, public servant, executive, and community leader, I have managed to work on numerous complex issues, including as an international negotiator under the UN Budget and Governance Committee, the UN Climate Change Convention, helping with the implementation of the 2006 Softwood Lumber Agreement with the United States, and most recently on economic development issues with Indigenous communities, including here in Toronto. In terms of financial and organizational management, as a director in the federal government, I have been responsible for over 63 people in 4 locations, including here in Toronto, a salary budget of over $4 million, and a funding envelope of over $30 million. I have also managed an international funding envelope to the United Nations of almost $500 million and a $300,000 fund on international energy and climate change development. With respect to community leadership, I have been a member of the Planning Committee for the Couchiching Institute on Public Affairs here in Toronto, a board member and vice president of the Causeway Work Centre, a mental health and economic development agency, which also partners with CAMH's RISE initiative, led the creation of the Ottawa Sustainability Fund, a clean energy and environmental community fund, as well as an advisory committee to the City of Ottawa. In the course of this career and in my community leadership, I have become increasingly familiar with the Planning Act, municipal waste management, public transit and transportation issues, economic development, poverty reduction, and how to be an effective interface between numerous stakeholders, citizens, and their government, in this case the municipal government. Therefore, with significant experience in consensus building, negotiations, public sector leadership, and a commitment to public service excellence, I believe I would be an ideal candidate for this appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a question for you, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I heard Ward 28, and I'm not sure if you actually live there, but I wanted to know, as I've asked some other candidates, if you were put into this position, would you consider running in the next municipal election for a councillor seat?
Thank you very much, Councillor. While I have an extensive interest in this position, as it is now, I am personally and professionally not in a position to run in the next municipal election.
So is that no?
It is a no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Alison Rose. Alison Rose.
Good morning, Mayor Tory, members of council, fellow nominees, and members of the general public. What an exciting day. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to have some small sense of what you have all gone through when you have put your names forward and stood for election. It's a bit terrifying. I submitted a biography and a list of endorsements that I would encourage you to read sincerely. I received a few more endorsements this morning, and I don't know if you got to see them, but one of them was from the former Chief Justice Warren Winkler. He said, "How exciting." I once lived in an hourly motel for weeks at a time and thought I did that to think about what, how, and why all those people who passed through that place were marginalized, and why that place, that hourly motel, might be a good place. And I ended up making a film about it. The retired medical officer of health, Sandy McPherson, liked the film so much, he suggested me as the keynote speaker as a theological college, Knox College annual dinner. And I had to make a pitch to all those elderly conservative Presbyterians about why an hourly motel might be a good place for the community. I would make the same argument for safe injection sites and for poverty reduction, that they honor human beings and protect them. I once spent a year and a half going in and out of an artificial intelligence group at the University of Toronto, learning enough to write a story about a group that was trying to understand how the brain works by developing computer programs called neural networks that would eventually learn on their own. The professor I wrote about is now a Google vice president, and his postdoc, Zubin Garamani, who was married in Ward 28, he was an Iranian refugee and a postdoc at U of T, and he's now the technology officer at Uber. I say that in part because we have a university at our heart, and there are lots of young people who come through this city who are brilliant and who love the city and have something to offer, and we could tap them. When I was newly out of university, my housemate was an urban planner who left large-scale design drawings on our dining room table for weeks at a time. I went with him to the waterfront redesign presentations where I heard Pam McConnell champion the waterfront she envisioned. It was through the company of urban planners that I watched Corktown Common grow and thought about the Regent Park redevelopment and learned about the community hub that we would build there. I walked past a larger-than-life painting of Jane Jacobs holding an ear trumpet, listening to the city every day in the 401 Richmond building where I have a studio. And for 20 years, I've been listening to the most marginalized people in the city and the brightest people in the city. I listened to my friend Marty Toplitsky, who founded the Lawyers Feed the Hungry program, which is near and dear to my heart. I listened to him say we should treat our guests as if they were guests in our homes. I love how he distilled our purpose to one simple idea that you could go back to and unpack when you wondered what the right decision was to make. I have one for the city, and I'd like to try it out on you. The universal city, universally accessible, that would be welcoming to all. It would give all a sense of dignity. It would facilitate them to be productive contributors to the community fabric. Community hubs are part of a universal city. Great infrastructure is part of a universal city. The bike lanes have made a profound and unexpected impression on me when I think about infrastructure. I've been cycling in this city for 30 years, and it wasn't until you made bike lanes that I, a taxpayer and a longtime resident of this city, felt entitled to the roadways in quite the same way that drivers feel entitled, I guess. What I was not expecting was how happy those bike lanes make me feel.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
The next candidate is Eric Wyczenski.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Council and Mayor and Speaker. As a resident of Ward 28 for the last 4.5 years, I've had the opportunity to see the potential and the beauty that this ward has. The Christmas market in the Distillery District every year, St. Lawrence Market and the diverse options of food and choices, spending summers on the beaches of the Toronto Centre Islands. Unfortunately, it also has its downsides. Being at the epicenter of Ward 28 in the Sherbourne corridor, being woken up in the middle of the night from screaming and crying of people who are mentally ill or addicted. Seeing community housing in the area, such as 200 Sherbourne, for example, which had a project to replace their balconies 2 years ago. Over 60% of the building is still missing a balcony, and 2x4 pieces of wood were placed on the doors to prevent anybody from trying to get out. To this day, there's still no balcony, and the majority of the tenants at 200 Sherbourne are families with small children and pets. This poses a risk. In addition, there's a community housing building just past Sherbourne and Dundas. For the last 2 months, have been missing patio doors. These units have been open and exposed to the weather, and winter is nearly approaching. All of these are items that should be addressed as a councillor to promote the possibilities of what I've mentioned, to address the issues that I have mentioned, not to just continue a legacy or babysit, but to promote the future of this ward. And as I said, has the possibility to be something extremely amazing, especially since it's a partnering ward for the downtown core and promotes a lot of the tourism that comes into the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
The next candidate is Olli Calderon.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Olli Calderon, and I do not intend to be a candidate in 2018. I'm a Corktown resident in the southern portion of Ward 28 and have been involved and active in Toronto's growth and infrastructure my entire life. Since 2009, I've been actively involved at both the Corktown Residents and Business Association, the CRBA, and at the West Don Lands Committee, which is the Pan Am Village and now Canary District around the distillery. Further, I'm an active current member of the stakeholder advisory committees for both the Relief Line subway as the CRBA representative, and more recently at the Unilever Precinct Planning, that's the Hughes East Harbour Plan, as a Corktown resident with a planning background. I hold a master's degree in transit and transportation planning, as well as a bachelor's in urban geography from Ryerson. My master's dissertation from years ago ties perfectly to how my part of Ward 28 is growing nowadays. It focused on how best to join neighborhoods and mitigate separation across physical barriers like railways, highways, and rivers. That's my neighborhood in a nutshell. And my bachelor's thesis ties nicely to my ward's future as it assessed the distinct demographics and trends within close proximity of downtown subway stations. In the early 2000s, I was selected by council to be on the Toronto Cycling Committee at a time when Jack Layton and then Olivia Chow were the chairs. I was the co-chair of the Network and Infrastructure Subcommittee for several years, where I worked on adding and improving bike trails and routes and formulated the Amalgamated City's first bike plan. For this role today, I'm a strong proponent of Councillor McConnell's many local area improvements, and rather than adding new goals, I'm simply looking to continue those improvements through the remainder of this term, including things like heritage discoveries at the North Market and previously her heritage lighting program, ongoing parks improvements like terrific Bursey Park, and 5 new park renovations already underway around Corktown. One of them is complete and another's starting any day now. Regent Park's revitalization, of course, and the first Parliament site that the Council put a lot of effort into securing now for the Toronto Public Library. There's further West Don Lands projects and staging, including properties recently put to RFP as part of provincial and city affordable housing strategies. That's 1,300 units actively starting during this term, along with many other condo and development proposals throughout the Corktown King Parliament growth area, covered heavily in the TO core work. And of course, the continued recovery of the Toronto Islands following this year's record lake levels. So much ongoing that I want to stress that I would look to retain through to the election all of the knowledge and details understood by Pam's great staff, some of whom I've already worked with on local issues. So I know the current local details, I know the Council's legacy, and a great deal about what's on the horizon. But what else? I'm that guy. All of you have a few locals in your ward that are the first to call 311 to get the lighting fixed on a public art piece, one like site-specific at Eastern, or a rude graffiti tag removed from, say, the parquet wall along the Richmond overpass. They don't get angry at the councillor's office. They don't look for personal glory from acting. They just look to get it corrected quickly and efficiently. I'm one of those folks. But I've also started looking out lately for some of the new residents in my ward. 2 of the affordable housing buildings in the Canary District were built with Parapan athletes in mind, and now they house a high number of my neighbours with acute mobility and access concerns. One of them is Adam. He's been coming regularly to West Don Lands meetings and more recently CRBA. He's got a lot of good urbanist ideas and, to me, a very simple and doable request. A pedestrian wheelchair curb cut at the southeast corner of Palace and Cooperage between those 2 new buildings so he and his neighbours can more readily visit friends in the other building without wheeling a good 100 metres further away or rolling diagonally along the roadway. This is a desire line, same as pedestrians traverse and create daily without a second thought, and it's an example of simple ways I think I could help in the short period of this nominations term. I also urged planners last spring at the King Street pilot meetings to include temporary curb height platforms at some stops, similar to ones Councillor Wong Tam applied to great effect a few summers ago on Church Street, to allow those same neighbours of mine to use our new streetcars on the nearby 514 Cherry service with easy access from their home and fewer steep exits from the vehicle when they reach downtown. Plus, a couple of those platforms like that are a better way to see how that step drop would affect the King Street pilot's overall results. Just 2 more quick points, please. That's the new part of my ward, but I also care tremendously about the old. I'm a resident owner on a small street in Old Corktown where each of the row houses are heritage listed. Preservation issues are front of mind for me and will continue to be. I'm also a denizen of the city from its older inner suburbs. I'm born and raised in Scarborough. I grew up within eyesight of the Kennedy subway station. I was a TTC kid. My father worked all his career at TTC Greenwood Yards. Local transit has been my life, and I possess a detailed knowledge of TTC operations, both planning and capital, citywide transit plans, and countless transportation infrastructure issues, including all of the latest iterations in scheduling. I can jump into any of those fires immediately, instantly up to speed. And lastly, in closing, I admit where I initially had supportive feedback for any of this from leaders of the groups I attend and even another nearby, they've since opted to support someone else. I'm a bit disappointed by that, but you know what? I love and am proud of my neighborhood. I love what's evolving and growing, and I'll still love it long after whatever happens today. I'd love the chance to work with all of you for a few months.
Thank you.
Olli, Calderon, thank you.
Councillor Fletcher, you have a question?
I bet you can guess my question by now. And I know you're active in the Ward 28 community and have been. So I am asking if you were to be successful and council was to appoint you, would you run in the upcoming election in 2018? There's 2 new seats. More than likely, if the OMB does, if Councillor DeCiano isn't successful, there'll be 2 new seats. And would you consider running in either one of those seats or any other seat in the City of Toronto?
So I have to admit, as a neighborhood local, the split of the ward and the creation of Ward 21 is really appealing. But I also know of several people that do even more in my neighborhood than I already do.
Pardon me? Didn't hear what you said.
I know several people in my neighborhood that do even more around than I already do, that are intending to look forward to that. And I think I'd actually prefer to work with them. I don't actually see myself out campaigning or raising funds for a campaign, so I think I'm better just looking to support someone else.
So is that a no?
Oh, yes, that's a no, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next candidate is Rona Bailey. Rona Bailey. Rona Bailey. Not present. The next candidate then is Brian Schulz.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, members of Council. My name is Brian Schulz, and I am pleased to stand as a candidate for Councillor Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale. I will neither run in the upcoming municipal election nor run in an election for any level of government. My letter, biography, and letter of reference are before you as part of the clerk's package. I have lived in the ward for 36 years and continue to have strong ties to the ward. My work as a consultant in the public sector, including the time spent as the consultant project manager for a major multi-year City of Toronto transformational project, has given me keen insight as to how city government works. It will also support my effective work as councillor, as a member of the Government Management Committee, and as a member of any other committees and boards in which I may serve at the pleasure of the Mayor and the Striking Committee. I will hit the ground running. I know how to get things done, and will follow up as needed to ensure that Council's good work continues as planned. I will also ensure that any open matters in the Office of Councillor Ward 28 are promptly addressed in cooperation with the existing office staff. I would like to outline my commitment to the residents and businesses of Ward 28 and to Council should I be appointed councillor. I commit to being a strong advocate for the wards and the city's diversity, neighbourhoods, and public and green spaces. Specific to the Lower Don River and Toronto Island communities, I commit to working with city staff to ensure that flood mitigation measures are in place and that the city's response protocols are refined to protect these areas from spring flooding next year. Nearly 90% of Ward 28 residents live in multi-residential buildings. I commit to advancing ways the city can support housing affordability and fair rental practices. Homelessness and poverty are continuing challenges to the city, and Ward 28 is no exception. I commit to visit city-funded shelters and other support agencies on a regular and frequent basis to observe their operations, speak with their clients, and work with agency staff to enhance their support to the most vulnerable. Increasing the availability of shelter beds and other services are important. These facilities must also be safe, clean, accessible, and welcoming for clients when they are in need. I commit that I will advocate for additional external support so as to give the disadvantaged a better chance to emerge from poverty. Ward 28 is experiencing significant development and densification. Change is good. Properly planned change is great. I commit to help ensure that planned development positively contributes to the character of the ward, that it, on balance, provides a mix of residential options, including affordable and subsidized housing, and that it is supported from day one by properly scaled basic city services such as utilities, policing, and transit. In speaking with some of you, I understand that being a councillor is more than working in one ward. It is also a city-wide responsibility. I commit to providing a cooperative but fresh perspective at Community Council and in this chamber on pressing city matters, road safety being one example. Initiatives such as Vision Zero, Toronto's road safety plan, are well-reasoned, and I look forward to its full implementation. I will contribute additional suggestions to adjust all road users' behavior to make our streets safer. I do not have any personal or hidden agenda that will detract from my service to Ward 28 or to the city. As I mentioned previously, I have lived in the ward's current boundaries for 36 years, from 1972 to 2008. I moved to Ward 31, Beaches East York, in 2008 with my then fiancée and now wife and mother of our 2 children. My mother still lives in Ward 28, and she is planning to move to Regent Park next year. My address in East York is of benefit to the role of Councillor Ward 28, as I will be very effective at Toronto East York Community Council with extensive history in both former municipalities. I commit to be in Ward 28 libraries, community centres and businesses, participate in community events and BIA board meetings, and walk the streets of Ward 28 to be as accessible as possible to residents and business owners. While I will sleep in Ward 31, I will live Ward 28. In closing, I am enthusiastic to serve the ward and the city in the role of Councillor Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale. I am passionate and dedicated to be the ward's advocate on council and to help sustain Toronto's high standing as a destination to live, work, and play. My name again is Brian Schulz. I appreciate your support. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to answer any questions a member of council may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, I was listening to your speech, and a piece that I'd like you to address is, given the prior councillor's commitment to it, is the poverty reduction strategy. Do you have any history of involvement with that work, and how do you see that work rolling out for the remainder of this term in your capacity, proposed capacity as councillor of Ward 28?
Thank you very much, Councillor Mihevik. The poverty reduction strategy is something that obviously I would review if appointed as councillor in great detail. I'm a quick study, being in my professional background as a consultant, being able to incorporate not only that information, but voices and opinions from all sides. I would commit to continue the mandate of the late Pam McConnell's commitment to the ward and to poverty reduction. And as I mentioned in my speech, I will be part of the forces on the ground to listen to the residents, to gain first-hand accounts, and to work in the limited term of council to ensure that the shelter system and the housing support is as optimized as possible.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next candidate is Louis Molnar.
Good morning. Mayor Tory and members of Toronto City Council, my name is Louis Molnar. Toronto is my home, having been a resident of Sherbourne Street for many years and now in the University Rosedale area. So what happens in my community directly impacts me, and this is the sort of representation that will make a difference in Ward 28. My education background includes law, accounting, international relations, and business strategy degrees, as well as authoring papers and books on business and real estate. But what I take the most pride in, what really drives me, is the service to my community. Whether through 15 years and counting of volunteering with the Fort York Food Bank, as the founder and chair of Twainbow, a global autism LGBT+ not-for-profit, or serving as the delegate on Ontario Provincial Council, and recently the chief financial officer of University Rosedale, I truly come to life when working with others. I've expressed that sense of service in my work. As the owner of business planning firm KMJ Consultants, now in our 25th year, I've helped mentor and build small businesses worldwide, but also contributed in broader ways by managing projects that include the Canadian Department of National Defence, Toronto Community Housing, and an urban planning project that transformed the village of Kome in Chad, Africa, to a thriving modern metropolis. That last project and a subsequent award led to a post as a professor and chair of law and urban planning. This year, for my work with the autism and LGBTQI communities, I was honored at the J.S. Woodsworth Human Rights and Equity Awards here in Toronto, as well as the Diversity and Media Awards last month in London, England. As a partner at KMJ, I've been required to travel quite a bit, bringing my version of Torontonian, bohemian chutzpah and collaborative spirit to other places. While living in the States, I served 3 elected terms representing Harris County Precinct 139, and then as the appointed presiding judge of that area. In the position of city councilor, I would draw on my current work as well as experiences abroad to make a difference here at home. In Toronto, we have some daunting challenges that I recognize and are particular points of focus for me. Managing a city that seeks to grow outward and upward while maintaining and increasing green space and soil exposure in positive ways, such as the Bentways Gardner waterfront project. Poverty and housing. I do personally believe we are only strong when we rise together, and the recent homelessness mortality is a place I would seek solutions. Expansion and diversity of key industries for job creation and making real the plans to create homegrown, permanent, job-generating businesses. Cultural diversity, inclusiveness, making sure we defend freedom of expression and faith. We have other needs, including our disabled communities' mobility challenges, diversifying our transit, and continuing to build on the great work of this membership here to get Toronto moving, our aging population, and advocating for centralized rail service while defending the privacy rights of its passengers. These challenges are significant, but not crippling to a city that sets an example nationwide, and I look forward to being part of that process. The next member of City Council representing Ward 28 must be able to hit the ground running, understanding the neighborhood in which they work as I do, as well as the practice of the institutions they will join.
Can you please wrap it up? The timer's not working there.
No, my background in public policy and governance, solid education and work experience, and passionate dedication to my community right here show that I'm ready to lead on the first day. Thank you for your time, Mayor Tory and members of council.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next candidate is Eric Murphy.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eric Murphy. I've been a resident of Cabbagetown for 33 years when my wife and I moved there to raise our 2 children after I completed my master's degree in political science at l'Université de Laval in Quebec City. I moved there having the audacity to think that I could pay a mortgage and feed a family as an artist. I was, of course, saddened by Pam's death, but also surprised because she seemed like such a force of nature. Yet we're here to choose her replacement. But I don't think there can be a real replacement for Pam because she was a uniquely gifted and dedicated public servant. So what do I aspire to achieve as a placeholder until the next election, and why do I believe I might be that person? Well, I'm applying to bring continuity to a ward that I care deeply about and to the values I believe Pam embodied. During my career, I've combined a love for the arts with a strong sense of social justice and public service. Surviving as an independent contractor in the world of film, television, and published fiction writing requires hard work, perseverance, and strong interpersonal skills. As the owner of a small business, which is what I've been for over a number of decades, I understand the needs, the struggles, and the frustrations of that business sector. I'm a bilingual performer, a member of l'Union des Artistes, our French union across Canada, and actor of the largest organization of cultural workers in Canada. For a decade, I served as the elected Vice President of Member Services in Toronto. During my management of this portfolio, we promoted differently abled performers and made sure that our TV and film screens represented the cultural diversity that we encounter on our sidewalks here in Toronto every day. During my time in office, my motto was, do not design boots for the men and women in the trenches before speaking to the men and women in the trenches. And that is a philosophy that I would bring to this council, because I believe that decisions that affect people's lives should never be reached without first listening to and engaging with the very people who will be impacted by those decisions. Beyond the arts community, I've taken a keen interest and an active role in my neighborhood and the local business community. I spent 5 years volunteering with Out of the Cold. The program at St. Andrew's Church that some of you know feeds the homeless and the working poor in downtown Toronto. I initiated a small but what I thought was a really important ritual. I shook the hand of each guest we would feed at night, sometimes well over 200 people as they walked through our doors. And I always remember one guest who, after his supper, stopped and looked to the ground and said, "Your handshake is the only human contact I get all week." Sobering. I also worked diligently with our local BIA, especially during a 2-year battle to rid our neighborhood of a restaurant that served as a well-known drug haven and a fence for stolen merchandise. And as a result of that eventually successful undertaking, I was named the Cabbagetown BIA's Volunteer of the Year 2 years in a row. I also spent a decade as a volunteer coach with the Donvale Softball League. We coached children from St. Jamestown, Cabbagetown, and Regent Park. I spent a decade as the PTA Vice President at l'École Publique Gabriel Roy, the only French school in Ward 28, the one my children attended. My work as a writer continues to draw me to the cause of literacy because I believe that you cannot be the author of your own destiny if you can't read and write. And I've spoken to numerous schools about this, both in Canada and in Bermuda. In 2014, one of my historical novels written for young readers between the ages of 9 to 13 spearheaded the Regent Park Reads Literacy Initiative, and my production company produced One Coal, the video for the Daniels Corporation to celebrate the rejuvenation of Regent Park. I mention these experiences because I care about social justice and community involvement. I also care passionately about local transportation because I'm a car driver and an avid cyclist. We must find a way to get both parties to coexist. I share the Mayor's commitment to solving the problem of gridlock, which creates so many different problems, from loss of valuable production time for commuters, the alarming incidents of road rage and pedestrian fatalities. If you choose me to sit in Pam's seat, I can assure you I will not seek office in the next election, but the prospect of contributing to the ward and city I love for the next 13 months fills me with great excitement and humility. I ask you to consider me to be the next voice to join your voices in the incredibly important work of running this amazing city that my family and I have called home for over 3 decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Fletcher?
I think you probably can guess, but you have been very active in the community, know quite a bit about all the issues. So I'm going to ask you that should council select you as the interim councillor, or the councillor between now and October 28th, 2018, would you have an intention to run in the election in October 2018?
I addressed that question in my speech, Ms. Fletcher. I did say it wasn't. I did say no, it was not my intention. No.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Mihevik, question.
Good point. Good point.
Yes, thank you. I think you touched on it in your speech, but if you could just address in a more pointed manner any piece of your history and your involvement with poverty reduction and where you might see a productive use of this year towards that end.
Thank you for bringing that up. I know that in our time with Out of the Cold, one of the key building blocks we felt was important in helping reduce the number of homeless people in Toronto was housing. And to that end, I would consult with both Sean and Kelly from Pam's office to see how that could be best addressed. Not going to try and reinvent the wheel, just keep it rolling forward.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Our next candidate is Masudur Laskar. Masudur Laskar. Masudur Laskar. Not present. Next is Joel McCallum.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, Your Worship, Mayor Tory, members of council, fellow citizens of Toronto. Pam McConnell was a tireless force for social justice and equality who served with strength, love, and dignity over 35 years. She was a great representative, and no one would be able to replace her. My family moved into Ward 28 in 1982. The gift of affordable housing we were given has had a profound impact on my life. As a boy, I was introduced to the importance of democracy and community. I learned that raising your hand to volunteer and to vote is the cornerstone of building a great community. I grew up around women like Pam McConnell, strong in their beliefs, who knew the only way to facilitate change was commit to an issue and take action. The unique and diverse communities that make up Ward 28 deserve passionate representation. They deserve someone who knows that government exists to do the things that people cannot do for themselves, and that government is most successful when it uses the economy of scale to achieve better value and services for our taxpayers. Growing up in Cabbagetown, I was surrounded by people dedicated to building great communities through volunteerism and democratic control. Living in a mixed income co-op with affordable, safe housing gave me tremendous opportunities. At 12, I began volunteering as well as working at a neighborhood hardware store on Parliament Street. I held my first management position at 18, and since then I have coached and mentored hundreds of employees. Whomever is chosen will have the privilege of representing the constituents of Ward 28. They will have the honor to work beside this dedicated group of representatives and the responsibility to effect change that is necessary or support the status quo if that makes the best sense for the citizens of this awesome city. I am an elected official in my community. Currently, I am president of Hugh Gardner Housing Cooperative. A well-run co-op is democracy in action. I represent the members, and without being able to listen and develop a plan that they will support, progress and decisions would come to a standstill. We run on the same democratic system. We run on the same democratic system. We govern the co-op the same way that council governs the city. We prepare multi-million-dollar budgets, work with committees, consult members, provide services, and review financial statements. A real city within a city. When the new councillor is chosen, they will immediately need to address noise complaints, work with developers, solve disagreements at the BIA level, and be accountable to the constituents of the ward. Just as I have spent my career being accountable to customers, employees, and stakeholders, I have also been accountable to people who have voted for me. As a city councillor, I will make this pledge to the 70,000 residents of Ward 28 and the citizens of Toronto. I will live and breathe the same commitment that I have shown as president of my community. I have a newfound respect for anybody who has run for office. You start with one supporter, then 2, 10, 50, and then 100 plus. I began by educating people about the appointment and then getting them to go online and sign a petition. I will forever be grateful for their support and encouragement. These individuals know that I will give 100% to ensure their support is honored, that I will listen to all sides of an argument before making decisions, that I am smart enough to know that I don't have all the answers, and I will work to identify talented people with great ideas to help us build the best Toronto possible. I will seek out common ground and unite us with the hope of finding solutions that benefit us all. My plan is simple. I will work every day to ensure that the Ward 28 office and myself are committed to working with our constituents to build a better and safer community. I plan to keep the current staff as they have invaluable knowledge about the ward and Pam's agenda. I will reach out to community leaders, business owners, and stakeholders to ask for ideas to best achieve our goal, as I know there are several community events already planned. I will ask my fellow councillors to help me engage the resources of this great city to ensure that...
Can you wrap up, please?
Yep. To ensure that we are doing all we can. And I will call upon the mayor for his guidance, support, and leadership to ensure that we are working towards the best solutions for Toronto. In closing, I believe I have a wide range of skills and experience, and I can be an asset to the city. I believe that my ability to listen and identify with people gives me the necessary tools.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kevin Wong.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a longtime resident who lives, works, and plays in Ward 28, I'm confident that I not only have the local context, but also really an intimate understanding of the unique challenges of living in a vertical community. My name is Kevin Wong, and I will bring to the appointment a track record of action, of getting things done for our community, doing things with them rather than for them, and consulting them for things like construction noise exemptions before approving them. It's actually what I teach my students at the Translational Research Program at the University of Toronto. There, I teach my students how they can work with different stakeholders and to effectively lead and deliver projects and programs that contribute to a healthier city. I think similarly here, I think it's important that we have an interim councillor who can act on the priorities set by Mayor Tory and council to make our city safer and healthier, to get it moving, as well as to advance the important work that was begun by Councillor McConnell to combat poverty across our city. And I know just how vital this work is, because I know from my own lived experience how it feels to live without. My parents were refugees from the Vietnam War, who came here with nothing but the clothes on their back. So I know what it's like when you have to make every dollar and every single penny count. Because it was not too long ago that I was in the very similar shoes. I wouldn't have learned how to swim if it weren't for YMCA's commitment to making rec and community programs accessible. That's why things like the welcome subsidy are something that I personally really believe in. As interim councillor, I will bring not just this lived experience, but also an understanding of the business at City Hall. I've had the opportunity to work with many of you here on council on different initiatives like Toronto Youth Equity Strategy, where I co-chaired the expert panel, where we worked together to build support and resilient systems for our youth who are most vulnerable to serious crime and violence. And we worked together to save the dedicated 10 youth spaces. I've also been working with the Toronto Police Service on their new behavioral competencies and core values. And this is to accelerate that shift that we need to make towards community-driven neighborhood policing. In the broader community, I was on the steering committee for Commitment to Community, which is a coalition of over 80 agencies that focused on poverty reduction. And I'm proud to have also been able to serve on the board for the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto as the non-Indigenous member and a proud ally of the community, which is one of Canada's original friendship centres, but also the oldest Indigenous agency here in the city. With me as interim councillor, you won't just be adding someone with a new, diverse, and youthful perspective. You're getting someone who reflects and is living the reality that's increasingly representative of our city. A reality that we know, that we saw in Census 2016, is younger and is racially diverse, and a reality that's increasingly vertical. I'll just conclude by sharing that I left my career in banking and capital markets because I wanted to dedicate it to breaking down barriers to work and education for our most vulnerable communities, because I was in their shoes not too long ago. I proudly joined the Canadian Armed Forces because I wanted to serve my country, the country that welcomed my parents when others had decided to close their borders. So my hope is that for you here on council, that you will give me this opportunity to serve my community and my city, the city that I love and am proud to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning, Kevin, and thank you for coming down today. I wanted to ask you if you do get the appointment, would it be your intention to run again? And remembering that if there's a redistribution, there'll be more than one ward that Ward 28 will become.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Perks. At this time, my intention is not to run. I think the reason I'm standing here before everyone is because I've been encouraged from different members in my community, as someone who's already been working with the community to serve here. If the opportunity does come up, I think at this stage, keeping all of my options open, it's something that my community has continued to encourage me to do so, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, one of my questions has already been answered. Good morning, Kevin. Because I was surprised to see you running for the appointment. It's not a law, but it is a preference of council that they appoint someone who isn't going to run in the very next election. But you've already said your ear is with your community. You mentioned in your speech, though, about the various components of the poverty reduction strategy and your ability to relate to it. Is it your understanding, though, that in large part the poverty reduction strategy is pretty structured, already written, and really a matter of timing and when can we fund it? Would it be your intention to stick to those guidelines, or do you have things that you think are missing from it?
I think there's opportunities to really localize kind of some of these key recommendations in there, because as I'm sure you can appreciate, neighborhood to neighborhood is different, and so we have so many different neighborhood improvement areas. What poverty reduction, let's say, focusing on employment for youth would be different from, say, Regent Park to Jane and Finch and a number of the different NIAs. And so I think for me in Ward 28, it would be working with kind of the key neighborhoods like Regent Park to ensure that not only do we keep the existing strategy, but we're actually making it as effective and impactful as possible, and that means working locally.
Thank you. Councillor Layton, question?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. One question. So we're going to be, the next appointed councillor for Ward 28 is going to join City Council in the middle of our budget process. We're going to have one opportunity to affect a priority on the city. If there was one program or policy that you would like to spend every moment of your time fighting for on City Council through this budget process, what would that be?
I think for me, particularly with the different community members that I've been working with in the southern half of Ward 28, a lot of it has to come down to transit and looking at multimodal strategies. Not just public transit, as many people often think when it comes to subways and buses, but also I think bike lanes. Bike lanes and for so many members of Ward 28, pedestrians. So bike TO, walk TO I think are big important aspects of that. And being able to work with council to really look at how we can get our city moving again will be a big priority for me.
Thank you. No, we only have one question. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next candidate is John Gladys.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the chamber. Does it go up? It's fine, let him, no, it's fine. All right, it's fine. Good morning, members of the chamber. Good morning, media, if the media is here. Good morning, Toronto. My name is John Gladys, and I'm running to be the interim councillor for the appointment of the ward. I prepared a speech for today, but I'm not going to use it. And the reason why I'm not going to use it is because I would rather prefer to talk from the heart and just see how it goes. To tell you a little bit about myself, I was born and raised in Toronto. I worked as a supervisor for a telemarketing company where I was promoted. And I also worked as an admissions counselor at a college as well. So I do have experience talking to people. I love talking to people. That's one of the driving forces that has brought me here today. We're here today to replace a former counselor who passed away, unfortunately, Pam McConnell. I wish we could have been here under better circumstances, but this is why we're all here today. The truth of the matter is nobody can replace Pam McConnell, just like Michael Ford can't replace Rob Ford, just like Mr. Hartz can't replace Ron Moser. But that's the situation of why we're here today. I think as a counselor, one of the prerequisites that all counselors need to have is they need to be passionate about being a counselor. And that's why I'm here today. I actually ran for a politician during our last municipal election. I ran because being a counselor is something that I've had a passion for many years. It was actually when I saw Rob Ford on television, when Council Chambers was on television on Rogers 10, that's what motivated me to be here. He talked with a passion, and I think that's the prerequisite that we need to have. I also think that we spend a lot of our times dilly-dallying and not paying attention to important matters, such as this one right now. There's actually a few councillors, I'm not going to mention them by name, but they're actually talking while I'm trying to have the floor. So out of respect for myself, out of respect for everybody who else is here today, please, what I ask of you is, can you put my time on hold if you don't mind? Thank you. Out of respect for myself, out of respect for the other members that are actually here today that are vying for this position, what I kindly ask of you guys is please try to pay attention. This is a very important matter, and it should be taken as such. You can resume my time now.
I did.
Thank you. So some of the important issues that I think that we're not spending enough time doing, or some issues that I think we spent too much time doing. Just to quote Mamalady as well, when we talked about the whole approving chickens on the back of people's backyards, right? To quote him, he said, and I quote, "What the flock is going on," right? We're spending too much time on not important matters. We should be spending more time on important matters. So what are some of our important matters? Some of the Toronto police officers, they're telling us that they're overworked. Some of the paramedics, they tell us that they don't have the actual equipment that they need for their jobs. You can talk to Councillor Karygiannis about that. He spoke about that as well. Another important matter that we have is our environment. As governments, whether it is municipal, provincial, federal, we have a responsibility not just to the people, but to the environment as well. There was a committee that Councillor McMahon was on just a while back, and they talked about electric cars. And I have a family member of mine who's actually vying for a new car, and I told her, look into electrical cars. And what she told me was, well, we don't really have the infrastructure to support that. These are responsibilities that we need to actually have as a council here, is to actually look over our communities, but also our planet as well. We need to be taking these things very, very seriously, and I'm afraid a lot of us aren't doing that.
Can you please wrap it up?
Of course. Can I ask for an extension of my time, please?
No.
No.
Sorry.
If I can't ask for an extension, can I challenge the chair? And also, I would like a recorded vote, please. Thank you, Member.
Okay. As you mentioned, we're here for a serious matter, and we should treat it that way.
Absolutely.
We do have questions for you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Mr. Perks.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you for coming down, and thank you for your knowledge of our procedures. Many of us have been asking the different applicants for this job
Yes.
an important question.
Yes.
In the event that you're appointed to this role, would it be your intention to consider running in either of the successor wards, or if the ward boundaries don't change in that ward itself?
Thank you for the question. I've never been a city councillor. I have been an admissions counselor. So going into this position, I don't know how easy or how difficult or how much I'm going to love it or how much I'm not going to love it. I do know, or I believe, should I say, that I believe that the preference of the majority of the councillors here prefer that the person does not run again, right? And I also believe that a lot of the people that are here today are telling you that they're not going to run again because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they don't say that, you're not going to pick them, right? I don't want to be a counselor. I don't want to be a counselor here that talks because out of fear. I would rather, Mr. Perks, that I would be open and honest with you. So my answer is, I don't know, because I don't know if I'm going to love it. I don't know if I'm not going to love it. And I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to run just to boost my chances of you or anybody else picking me. I would rather be upfront and honest with everybody here.
Thank you. We do have another question. Councillor Mamalidi.
So, first of all, I appreciate you coming down, and I do appreciate you even trying to challenge the chair. even though the procedures wouldn't allow you to do that.
I understand.
And the reason I do that is because I'm assuming that when you got dressed this morning, when you wrote your speech last night, nobody called you to say, hey, don't come down, you're wasting your time. Did anybody call you to tell you that?
No, nobody called me to tell me that.
That's his question. Okay, that's one question, Councillor Mammoliti. Thank you. Mammoliti, you only have one question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't think he finished this question. I think it was an ongoing question.
I'm sorry, please. Councillor Doucette, you have a question?
Thank you very much for coming down today. Yes, it is hard only having one question. We appreciate that. What would be your one top priority if you were appointed? What's your one top priority between now and the next election?
Thank you for the question. I've been a big advocate of the environment. I currently own a Ford Escape Hybrid. I bought the car used because I got it at a very good price. And the reason why I bought that specific car is that back then, it was the most fuel-efficient car you can find. Even today, it's unfortunately the most fuel-efficient car you can find, except for fully electric cars. And I think this is a big problem that we have in the city, in the province, in the country, in the whole world. We don't spend enough time focusing on our environment. Every election, people talk about, well, the economy, they talk about transit. Well, if we don't have a sustainable, healthy environment, we're not going to have an economy. We're not going to have children to raise. We're not going to have families. We're not going to have pets. We're not going to have jobs. We're not going to have anything. And some people will say, well, the environment, well, we don't really have much jurisdiction on that. We have some, but a lot of it also goes to the provincial level. A lot of it also goes to the federal level, and that's true. But here's the thing. Even though we don't have all the jurisdiction behind that, we can still lobby our provincial governments. We can still lobby our federal governments. And this is the type of work that we need to do because, as I said, we not only have a responsibility to the people, but we also have a responsibility to the planet as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
The next candidate is Sarah Kitab.
Okay, Sarah, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Speaker. Mayor John Tory, council members, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak today and to be considered for the role of a councillor for Ward 28. I have been blessed with the opportunity to have traveled extensively in my life, and I can confidently say that Toronto is the most inclusive, the most inspiring, and the most vibrant city in the whole world. I grew up here. I graduated from the University of Toronto with a master's in education policy and leadership. The most important takeaway from my master's program was learning how to become what it takes to be an equitable leader and a change agent. I believe in collective action. My dream is to work with councillors to make Toronto a place for every person. Every resident that lives here deserves to have a full, rich life in the city, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their culture, regardless of their ethnicity. Every person deserves to live life to the fullest in Toronto. Today, council members, I present to you my authentic self, in hopes that you see the alignment with who I am and the role of a city councillor. My background is Egyptian and French. I can connect to speakers of this language. Nelson Mandela once said, if you speak to any man in a language he understands, it will go to his mind. If you speak to a man in his language, it will go to his heart. I speak the language of the highest percentage of minorities in this ward, Ward 28, Arabic and French. Moreover, from an equity lens, I am representative of this minority population. In addition, demographically, the highest population of people in this ward are between 25 and 34. That is my age category as well. Moreover, I am a high school teacher, as was the late and beloved wonderful Pam McConnell, may she rest in peace. Pam McConnell's legacy was poverty reduction and the revitalization project in Regent Park. As a high school teacher, my primary role is to care about my students. This is in line with your role as city councilors. You care about your residents, you care about your people, and come to balanced decisions by hearing their voices, coming to a consensus, and engaging in open, healthy discourse to make informed decisions for the greater good of all residents in Toronto, considering the local community, the greater ward, and the city as a whole. There is a diverse range of neighborhoods in the Ward 28. Cabbagetown, Regent Park, the Islands, Church Yonge Corridor, Bay Street Corridor. In addition, the population of the ward, according to the past census, 66,500 people. Out of these people, the languages are diverse, ethnicities are diverse. However, there is one salient key issue in this ward. 80% of people who live in Ward 28 live in apartment buildings 5 stories or higher. How can we support this population? How can we make sure that there is affordable housing for all? How can we ensure safety for these residents? I was just at the Waterfront for All conference this past weekend, and I heard the voices of residents who lived on the island and suffered the consequences of the flood in 2017. There are still issues around housing and infrastructure on the island. They are still suffering those consequences. How can we come together and fight climate change? Some of the solutions that came up this past weekend at the conference were informing citizens. Informed citizens are better citizens. So we can campaign and inform and make sure that there's infrastructure there to support these extreme weather events that will come up again in the future. This is a key issue this past year. Lastly, I pledge accountability. Accountability to my citizens. I will make sure that the citizens' voices are heard in Ward 28, and I will be there for every single event. I care about the people of Toronto, and I want to be part of the process that makes Toronto a better place for everyone living in it. Thank you. Please consider voting for me. I would be honored if you vote for me, Sarah Kitab, for future City Councillor of Ward 28. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Perks?
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Sarah, for coming down to address us and making the courageous step to apply. In the event that you're appointed to this position, would you make a commitment not to run either in Ward 28 or in the event of a boundary redistribution, any of the successor wards?
No, I will not be running. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Shan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks, Sarah, for your present speech. My question is, how would having a young person of color, a woman, in this chamber change things that happen here?
Well, as a city councillor, my primary role is to represent the people. So as a visible minority and an Arabic and French language speaker, I would communicate with residents, be open and transparent, make sure that those residents' voices are heard and represented in this chamber. In addition, I am no stranger to collaboration. I am all about teamwork. That is my job as a high school teacher. I cross-curricular collaboration, working with others to come to consensus. And I am also the high school debate coach, so I'm no stranger to debating as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi?
So I asked my question because I think it's more important for everyone else that's come out here thinking that they actually have a shot at this to know that councillors have already made up their mind. that in fact it's either NDP candidate or a right-leaning
Councillor
candidate.
Mamalidi, your question.
Are you aware that all that's happening here is just the wool being pulled over all of your eyes, and it's either NDP or right, and that's what's going on here? Are you aware you're not going to get the position because of the politics in this chamber?
Councillor Mamalidi.
Okay, first of all, there is always hope. I believe in the democratic process, and I am an optimistic leader, and I stand for the people of Toronto, and I believe that I can make a change, and I am open open and honored if you would consider voting for me today. Sarah Kitab, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh, Councillor Shiner.
So,
Question?
Sarah, if you don't get the appointment today, would you reconsider running in the election?
My interest in politics has been recently sparked in municipal politics, and I'm open to getting involved in the city and helping residents. Attending committee meetings this past weekend, I was at the Waterfront Summit, and Honourable Council Joe Cressy spoke as well about balanced decision making. And at this point in my life, I feel inspired and have the desire to help residents of Toronto. So I would definitely go forward with that thought in mind.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Layton. Wow.
With respect to my colleague, Councillor Cressy, I think honourable is a bit of a stretch, but the question is, and I asked this question before, we're going to have the 2018 budget is going to be tabled in December, and we're going to have an opportunity to comment on spending priorities of our city. That's really our opportunity to set our priorities as a council. If there was one thing, one program, one idea, one division that you would spend your time here in council, attending all the events is great, and it's fun sometimes, and it's challenging to get to all of them, so that's a good challenge to take on. But if there was one thing within our legislative role around the budget that you would focus on, what would that be?
Thank you for your question. So as I said, according to the last census, there are 66,500 people living in Ward 28, and 80% of these people live in apartment buildings 5 stories or higher. So that gives you an idea of the density of the population in this ward. It's very congested, and I think that a key issue is transit. And this also leads to poverty reduction, because if residents of this ward have a way to get to work, if residents of this ward can afford transit and it's more accessible, then in the long range, long term, you can see the effects of this. Poverty overall would be reduced, there would be less gridlock, and the overall harmony of the ward would be improved.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, there we go. Very simple question. I'm over here. How could you, over here? Hi. How could you be a city councillor and a high school teacher at the same time?
Thank you for that question. That is a very good question. And as I mentioned in my speech, there are many parallels to teaching high school and being a counselor. Primarily, number one, caring about the people and representing their needs. So if I am chosen as the new counselor for 2017 for Ward 28, I would immediately apply for a leave of absence for 1 year, and it would be approved immediately. Very simple process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, councillors, Honourable Mayor John Tory, for listening to my speech today. Have a wonderful day.
Our next candidate is Kimberly King.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Kimberly King. I was born and raised in the city of Toronto. I grew up at the peak of changing times amidst a lot of adversity. My exposure to many communities through Toronto Housing and other communities in Toronto have given me the opportunity to experience what it is to be a part of the most diverse city in the world. Outreach has been my biggest strength, whether it's with the police department or community organizations such as Boys and Girls Club or Trust 15. Through the poverty reduction strategy, I met the late Pam McConnell. The first impression of her was she's awesome. The ability to remember names and faces and to take on just the most bizarre of circumstances and sit in a room and have people just go at you. I was inspired by her. I learned throughout the poverty reduction strategy how much she and I had similar in common. In Toronto housing and in civil and social justice. It is because of her legacy that I say I would not be interested in changing anything that she has done this far. I would honor her time and carry out her mandate and leave her staff in place to continue their champion for the cause. I don't believe that this is a caretaking job. However, I do believe it would take more than a year to put forward my own initiatives and stamp my own stomping grounds, which is why I'm looking for the experience to learn. I have sat on several councils and boards throughout my years and continue to do so today. Currently, I'm focused more on a restorative justice initiative. However, I will say this, I am not a politician. I am an advocate. Thank you.
Cute. Questions? Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Kimberly, for coming down and sharing your thoughts with us. In the event that this council appoints you to that role, would you make a commitment not to run for re-election in Ward 28, or in the event of redistribution being approved, to not run in any of the successor wards?
At this time, I don't have the interest in doing so. It doesn't mean that I won't down the road, but as of today, that is not a part of my goals.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You went back to it right at the end of your speech, and I was wondering if you would expand on how you might bring to the floor of council your focus on restorative justice. Was it your intention to put that into our agenda come election year?
Thank you.
Yes, actually. I'm a huge advocate for restorative justice, particularly where it concerns the youth. I think that there isn't enough emphasis put on it, and as of late, I have been working through the different community organizations, hoping that I can get them on board to kind of get together and find a strategy in which we can come together and implement this in a cost-effective way without spending any money throughout the different communities throughout the city.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Kimberly, the last statement you made was, I'm not a politician, I am an advocate.
Yes.
What is the difference between the two, and can somebody be both?
I believe that an advocate is someone who's passionate. An advocate talks more about themselves in the sense that it's their passion. It's not necessarily the passion of the people they represent.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
I was actually going to ask for her to expand a little bit on what advocate versus politician means to her. If she wants to expand on that, she's welcome to. Otherwise, that's okay too.
You know what? I'll just take it as is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next candidate is Michael Creek.
Okay, Michael, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, Mayor Tory, members of council. My name is Michael Creek, and today I seek your vote and support to fill the vacancy for Ward 28 councillor. First, I want to acknowledge Pam. I can never replace her, and like so many in our city, I miss her terribly. Next, I want to extend my warmest thanks to Pam's family for your support, your endorsement, and your friendship. This means so much to me, Jim, Heather Ann, and Madeline. When I walk through Ward 28, I see Pam's work everywhere. I see her determination to build a better community in the revitalization of Regent Park. I see her commitment to people, to families and community in St. Jamestown, and I feel the profound effects she had on the community when I talked to the residents of Ward 28. The love and the respect that people have for Pam shows in their faces. Their voices express the deep bond that she developed by working for them for many years. I'm here today because I want to continue the relationship that Pam built between the city and the residents. I believe that every one of us can contribute to making Toronto a better place for each resident. This includes those of us who have known and experienced the worst that poverty can do to a person. Pam understood this in a very meaningful way. She looked for ways to bring everyone to the table, to assist in policy development and provide input on city initiatives, both big and small. I have moved from being homeless to receiving ODSP, from a grim Toronto community housing tower to a condo in Regent Park. And I'm here to say my first paycheck, my first income tax payments, my first property tax payments meant a great deal to me. I was proud of the feeling of belonging and contributing to my community. Not having to live in fear of hunger or homelessness allowed me to move forward. I connected again to people, to places, to social activities, and the beautiful things in life. From my journey as a young gay man, I have brought my lived experiences to various tables, from the city's anti-poverty initiative to the province's expert panel on homelessness, from the Toronto District School Board's Task Force on Equity, and to the United Nations in Geneva. And just as important to me, I use my lived experiences to connect with others in dire circumstances, acting as a role model, a leader in my various communities. I love paying my bills as much as I love having well-stocked cupboards. I love sitting with policymakers and others to do what I can do to make a difference in the lives of all our residents. I know others share this dream, and I know that I must find ways to welcome everyone to the conversation. I know that we cannot get anywhere in building a city for everyone if our approach is that all developers are all bad, any more than if we believe that those struggling on low income are lazy or incapable of helping themselves. The approach has to be cooperative and collaborative. Ward 28 is an incredible part of our beautiful city. The waterfront revitalization is an important part of the city's health and economic future, and it's critical that we get it right. I want to continue Pam's work on the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal, and I want to continue Pam's work on the historic redevelopment of the North St. Lawrence Market and continuing to strengthen the St. Lawrence neighborhood as a major tourist attraction and a historic heart of our city. I want to continue Pam's work in ensuring that the revitalized Regent Park is a vibrant home for people of different cultures, backgrounds, and economic circumstances. Let me be clear, I will not run in the 2008 municipal election. My intention is to continue Pam's work to the end of this term, following her example of kindness, compassion, collaboration, and consensus building. Ward 28 is my home and community. It is filled with marvelous people who want to build great neighborhoods and contribute to our great city. I seek your support to continue Pam's work, to work collaboratively with the residents and build a healthy community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Mr. Creek. There's been a good, important, and necessary discussion of diversity and representation in our chamber. And so my question to you is simply this, does this council chamber reflect Toronto's diversity? And how would your appointment improve it?
When I look at the council, I don't think it completely represents Toronto's diversity. What I can bring to this table to help with diversity is I have lived as a gay man. I've been out now for 40 years. I have a disability. I understand the complexity of what it's like to be homeless, and what it's like to live in poverty. I think that having a lens that you can look through for social economic reasons is extremely important. It is part of what would make our city a greater place, bringing that diversity to the council chambers. And I would encourage other people of different diversities to run for office and make our council more robust when it comes to diversity.
Thank you. Councillor Shan, question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That was my question, but I'll add another one then. My question is, we currently have a poverty reduction strategy, and you're very familiar with the strategy. If you were to change one thing to make it even better, what would that be?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yes, and for, like Pam, I work closely with her to help to develop the strategy with many people across the city. The one thing that I would add, if we were able to, is to speed up some of the things that are in that poverty reduction strategy. I think that it would have a real impact on people's lives every day, and that if we could find the ways to do that, working with other levels of government also to get that accomplished.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Deputy. We heard that you will not run in 2018 election. My question to you, sir, is this: will you not run, period, or will you not run in this ward? And if there's redistribution, will you consider running in another area?
No, I will not run in any area of the city for municipal politics.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Carroll.
Good morning, Mike. Mike, there was an awkward accusation hurled by one of my colleagues earlier on. What's your goal in coming here? Is your goal here to fly some party banner, or is your focus the poverty reduction strategy that I heard in your speech?
Yes. So I'm very concerned with the things that Pam was concerned about. I'm not connected to a political ideology at all. I want to get things done. That is the most important thing for me. And I think, that often, and we're finding this more, that we have more in common than we do have differences. And I think that's really important, that we start to work together in a more close manner, which includes, being respectful of other people's opinions. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Fletcher.
I just wanted to ask you about Regent Park, and how important you think that is, and what your commitment is to the redevelopment of Regent Park.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. I lived in Regent Park in RGI housing, and when I got a job, I could have gone elsewhere to have bought a condo, but I believe in Regent Park. I believe in the revitalization. I believe in the people who live there. There's many people still who have not received the same opportunities, same choices. I want to be able to work with councils to make sure that those things, that we move ahead with the revitalization of Regent Park, and most of all, that we address the concerns of the people in Regent Park who are often, very marginalized and don't feel they have a voice.
Thank you. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To Mr. Creek, besides your lived experience, can you tell Council what you have done by way of contributing to the existing poverty reduction strategy and perhaps other strategies, either with other bodies, provincial, federal, local?
Great. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I didn't just come about, being an anti-poverty advocate Today, I've been an anti-poverty activist for over 10 years now. I've worked closely with the federal government. I've helped to develop two provincial poverty reduction strategies, and it worked on housing issues. All of these things tie in, and I worked closely with Pam about making sure that when we developed this poverty reduction strategy, that we had a panel of lived experience people that we could call on to help us before we made crucial decisions that had an impact on their lives. All of those panels that I worked on, I worked in a collaborative way. And some of the things that I wanted, I didn't get. But you have to be able to take what you can get at the time, move on. All these things often change in increments. I want to be at those tables to make sure that we move forward, that we help people. And I think that's very similar to the attitudes and to the work that Pam did throughout her whole life.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk.
The next candidate is Fenton Jagdeo. Sorry, can't do that one. Jagdeo.
Okay, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 12 o'clock, right? So good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Excellent. Good to hear. My name is Fenton Jagdeo, and I am 23 years old, and I currently work for a management consulting firm called Molnar Deloitte. I love to eat, and I consider myself a foodie. It feels really good to be here today. The last time I was in the council chamber giving a speech to an audience was 6 years ago when I ran for the TDSB student trustee. I felt that I could make a difference in the lives of my fellow classmates who were not very different than me. In a similar way today, I stand before you not being different than any of the candidates who have spoken before me. What you've heard today is a passion for poverty reduction and community housing, sincere advocacy, the desire to champion social issues, a knack for diplomacy, a special connection to Ward 28, an appreciation for Ms. McConnell and her work, and a desire to see that work fulfilled to the end. As a past co-chair for the TDSB Student Super Council, president of Western University's largest residence council, a world-class diplomacy nerd having won awards at U of T and at Harvard University, and briefly as a past executive for the Toronto City Youth Council, and an adopted brother of the Ward 28, my sister being very involved in the provincial level, and having worked in Rosedale, I think it's fair to say that I do share these ideas in common. And in many respects, the candidates here today score high on the mission. But in the context of the appointment and what that means to the ward, there's much more involved than just the mission. And a gap is presented where I feel as though my candidacy might be a perfect fit. So I'm going to step away from the mission, and I'm going to talk about why I think at this very moment within this context, my skills as well as my desire to lead is important. But I think at first it starts with a narrative. I think the biggest question we have to ask ourselves today is, well, what's the point of today? What are we actually trying to get out of it? I come here not trying to be an advocate to reinvent the wheel and start new initiatives. Any strategic advisor would tell you that it's probably not ideal to try and start new things, to create new initiatives, because the money, the funding, the support just does not exist for that context. I hope to be a conduit. I'm not here to be a politician. I'm here to be a worker where the community needs become the mandate and success is the only valuable metric, not half-assed, but in full. I'm here to fill a gap so that when the time does come around, a true champion of the ward in their fullness can make an impact over 4 years and not within one. Some being here today, speaking and sitting before you all. So, what are the reasons? I think there are two main ones. I'm young and full of energy. I am a doer. I'm cautious to say that I might have been the youngest person to speak so far. There's nothing more satisfying to me than being an executor. And if we're not executing, we are rendered useless resource. I have a track record in my personal and professional life of getting things done with agility that would be an asset to this role. launching business lines for publicly traded companies, and advising companies on strategies to move forward. There's wisdom in youth. And I think that that diverse aspect that I can bring to council really does help bolster a perspective that may not necessarily be seen here. And for that, I'm truly, truly excited that I've given the opportunity to help out with that. And finally, I'm a strategic problem solver. Unfortunately, it's literally my day job. Working at a top firm and being a strategic and innovative thinker under the constraints provided is a challenge that for many in this room and many in our city don't know how to address and don't know how to address properly. The skills that I bring from my everyday and my abilities to transcend that and bring it to the council chambers is, I think, something that will truly generate a great benefit. But if council is looking for a politician who will try to make drastic changes within a year time frame, something that may not be possible, and try to replace a wonderful lady who is irreplaceable, then maybe I'm not fit to serve. But if we're looking for a role and a skill set to accomplish something over the next year in fluidity, then maybe I'm your guy. Shout out to Norm Kelly, sixth dad. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza, question?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned earlier on in your comments you're not a politician. What does politician mean to you? What does being a politician mean to you?
Being a politician, I think being a politician in today's vein, looking at a general consensus, is about being an advocate, not for the people, but for businesses, for self. And that's general. You're looking at me funny. It may not be for Toronto, but it's the idea that we come before to try and advocate on ideas, but really, are we truly being here for the people? That's my definition of politician. I'm here to work for the people, and that's why I didn't call myself a politician, because I think the term gets a bad rap. And I'm sure you have all faced it once or twice in your own career.
Thank you. Councillor Burnside, question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, we heard a number of councillors talk about diversity and the importance of diversity. By all means, look around the council chamber. What does diversity mean to you?
Diversity means to me a lot of things, but to keep it short and simple, it's the idea of bolstering ideas. It's creating strategies with people who come from varying backgrounds and being able to create a melting pot of great resources to implement in our city, whether that may be from an ethnic background, a socioeconomic background, or an educational background.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very quick question. Did you write your own information sheet that you provided to Council?
Yes.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
The next candidate is Lucy Troisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon. Mayor Tory, members of council, it's an honor to appear before you as an applicant for the interim councillor position for Ward 28. I have been a resident and community volunteer in Ward 28 for most of my life. I was born and raised in Regent Park with my 12 siblings, and I currently live and work in the ward. This ward has always been home. I currently serve as the Executive Director of the Cabbagetown Youth Centre, and should you select me to serve the remainder of Councillor McConnell's term, I would return to that role following the election of the new councillor next year. I've been most fortunate and privileged to serve Ward 28 for much of my 30-year career with the City of Toronto Parks, Forestry and Recreation Division, as the Manager of Parks and Recreation Operations and Manager of Community Engagement. I participated in the resolution of many challenging community issues in Ward 28. During my tenure at the city, I developed strong relationships with Ward 28 community partners, agencies, police liaison boards, boards of directors, business improvement associations, and school boards. I understand best, as anyone can, how City Hall works and how to serve the needs of my community. I can hit the ground running. It was also during this time that I worked closely with Councillor Pam McConnell on many issues, capital projects, and public meetings. Pam and I worked together for almost 20 years on creating opportunities to assist children, youth, newcomers, and their families in Regent Park and St. Jamestown. I supported Pam's efforts to secure capital funds for the much-needed Wellesley Community Centre, and we both lobbied to ensure that this centre, a first of its kind, had a daycare and library. That centre now provides access to programs and services for the St. Jamestown community and all the surrounding neighbourhoods. At City Hall, I chaired our division's efforts to address the needs of homelessness as well as those living in poverty. Poverty reduction is something Pam spent her life fighting for. As the division lead and under my leadership, we created many initiatives like the award-winning Parks Ambassador program, which continues today. Pam McConnell was a wonderful mentor and leader who helped me better understand how to handle complex community issues. Our discussions used to continue long after our public meetings were over, and that personal touch will be greatly missed in our community. Last April, I met Councillor McConnell as the Executive Director of the Cabbagetown Youth Centre. In spite of her poor health, we had a 2-hour discussion to develop new ways of ensuring newcomers had access to educational, recreational, and healthcare opportunities. In the spirit of that discussion, we made a number of changes that carry with them Pam's compassion for those in need. Our ward faces many challenges and has lots of opportunity. The exciting redevelopment of Regent Park, the building of the new St. Lawrence Market, matched by concerns about flooding on Toronto Island, safety in the streets, and the ongoing attention to housing and healthcare issues. I have experience working with key community leaders and agencies in the ward. I sit on the board of directors of the Regent Park Community Health Centre. I chair the Regent Park Pathways to Education Trust. And in addition to my current work as the executive director of the Cabbagetown Youth Centre, which serves hundreds of children and youth in the St. Jamestown and Regent Park neighborhoods, has kept me fully engaged with the needs of our young people and their families. I consider my 30 years of city service, senior volunteer roles, and knowledge of the ward an asset in serving the needs of Ward 28 for this interim period. I can hit the ground running and proudly continue the legacy of our late Deputy Mayor, Pam McConnell. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis, question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to the deputy, and thank you for coming and putting your name forward today, as well as to the rest of you. In the event that you're chosen, will you be running in the same ward in 2018 or in another redistributed ward in the city as a municipal councillor? Would your name stand next year in 2018 municipal council elections?
No, I am going to return to the Cabbagetown Youth Centre as their executive director.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
As a follow-on to Councillor Karygiannis, you sound very passionate about this. So why would you not consider running permanently in the 2018 election?
Because I think I could achieve a lot of the objectives that councillors have in their wards by the work that I've done before as a manager of Parks and Recreation. I focused on all high-risk neighbourhoods. My entire career was about high-risk neighbourhoods. My current job at the Cabbagetown Youth Centre allows me to continue to do that. I'm just a community person, and that's what I'd like to do.
Thank you. Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your experience as somebody who's working on the field with young people through a youth center, what's one area that the city is doing an awful job in? What's one area where the city is doing an awful job in terms of
awful job?
Awful job in helping young people. That,
we're not doing an awful job.
Just so I hear you correctly, you're saying an awful job?
Yeah, awful job. Part of being
yes.
Part of being
well,
politician is being
yes.
honest about it.
Okay, come on.
One of the challenges that I had in the high-risk neighborhoods, and something that I try to make a priority, is making our services more accessible. There seems to be a lot of wait lists, and I think we have to get better at engaging local agencies and partnering, and perhaps using our parks as program spaces as opposed to recreation centers. Access is a big issue.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza?
Yeah, there's a support letter in here on your behalf, supporting your candidacy by Spider Jones. In it, he says that you grew up in Regent Park. You actually lived in Regent Park before Regent Park became a different Regent Park?
Yes. So my family, my mom and dad were one of the first families to live in the Regent Park project. They had 13 children. My father was disabled with muscular dystrophy. My mother stayed at home with the 13. And my father, who was very ill, worked from 5 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. So yes, I was born and raised in Regent Park for 23 years. And that's where I got my passion, is because of all the services that not only the division provided, but great agencies like Dixon Hall. They provided all sorts of mentoring and leadership and guidance, and I think that was what kept me on the right path.
Thank you. Councillor Mihevik?
Yes, similar to my question with others, could you speak a little bit about your involvement on, say, more, not just direct lived experience, but on institutional levels, dealing with poverty reduction in our city? Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Councillor? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry. Other than lived experience, can you speak to your involvement, possible involvement with poverty reduction issues, say addressing more on a systemic level in the City of Toronto or provincially or federally?
Sure. Well, my whole career was actually devoted to poverty reduction. You know, I lived it, I know it, and I know the value of ensuring that programs and services for our children and youth are in place. I have always engaged many divisions. I've always engaged other levels of government to assist. So, you know, my current job as well, it's all about poverty reduction. I was the chair and lead for all the divisions, homeless and poverty, people living in poverty policies and procedures. I had written them all. I created the Parks Ambassador job that was to assist homeless people in our parks. Again, that was a global perspective on ensuring that other groups and divisions were part of that process, as it was very complicated. So I think my whole career has always been about poverty reduction.
Thank you. Councillor Al-Jamari?
Yes, a quick question. It's a concern that many of us share. Excuse my back. That when someone new comes into a pre-existing office, and for albeit a short time, we care about the staff that is there and that has been there for many years. Do you have intentions to keep the same staff?
My intention is to have a smooth transition, so I have no intentions of making any drastic changes. I want to hit the ground running and continue with Pam's legacy.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi?
Well, I recognize that this has had nothing to do with you, and Council's made a decision. Do you agree with Council's decision on increasing itself to 47 members?
That's a good question. You know, I don't know. I think I saw all sorts of models in terms of increasing, decreasing city council, changing boundaries. I don't think I would be in favor of increasing boundaries. I think maybe the ward changes would be more appropriate.
Thank you.
In terms of boundaries.
Thank you. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on that question. So the proposal, the 3 downtown wards, of which Ward 28 is one, are currently, as proposed, being turned into 6 wards due to the fact that the combined population is more than 250,000. So do you not support turning those 3 wards into 6?
I don't think so.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
That was just going to be my question. So you would, that's already, what are there's a new ward that is going to be developed there. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Mamalidi, please.
Oh, sorry.
They're both sorry.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher, can you ask your one question?
Yes, my one question was just to follow up on that one. So are you saying that you would only support 22 wards in the city?
At this point, I'm just a candidate, so I haven't really thought much about ward expansions, including the ward I'm in.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
So just a quick question, Madam Speaker, and I apologize if you addressed this in your speech and I missed it. So you already have a position that is in the employ of the City of Toronto as the youth director. Have you explored what arrangements will be made if you are not in that role for a year?
No, I left the city in 2011.
Oh, so you're not currently in that role?
No, I'm an executive director of Cabbagetown Youth Centre.
That
I had a 30-year career with the city.
I see what you mean.
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you.
Councillor Perks.
Just recently, the city manager of Toronto, Peter Wallace, made a presentation at the University of Toronto. And in that presentation, he said that our current revenue model is insufficient to support the programs we currently have, let alone support additional programs. Many people who have been here today have talked about the importance of implementing the poverty reduction strategy. Which is more important to you, keeping our taxes down or implementing the poverty reduction strategy?
Well, I think you could do both. You could engage other levels of government to help us with the burden of some of our costs. And we could also look at other partners that could assist the city with our delivery of programs and services.
Councillor Robinson, question.
Yes, there was a question earlier about diversity, so I want to ask you, the percentage of women on council is, in my opinion, low. How do you feel about the fact that we need more women on council and the gender issue?
Well, what I liked most about Pam McConnell is she was a strong advocate for women. And I would also suggest that that would be a great opportunity today. There are several women that are here being, as candidates. So I would hope that that council would consider that.
Thank you. Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if you just noticed the pivot from poverty reduction to ward boundaries, but that's actually not my question. My question is, I have a letter here of recommendation from April 16, 2012, signed by Janie Romoff, who is the current general manager. Councillor Hart was the former general manager. It says, I have found the candidate here to be a skilled and confident manager who has been able to bring diverse groups of staff and residents together to achieve common goals, most recently demonstrated through her work supporting service planning, community consultation processes, and the Toronto Newcomer Initiative. Was this, in fact, written about you?
No, it was written by... Sorry? Yes, it was written about me. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
In light of the answer you gave about additional resources and the answer you gave about enhancing recreational services by using parks more, could you explain to me how we're going to enhance recreation services without additional resources at the City of Toronto?
Without additional resources? Oh, absolutely, I support additional resources for programs and services.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We'll just do one more before we break. Madam Clerk.
The next candidate is Julia Volpe.
Okay. Julia, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really didn't want to be the speaker holding up your lunch, so I'll keep this short. Well, it's about 4 minutes. Okay, so good afternoon, Mayor Tory, members of council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today regarding my candidacy for the position of interim city councillor for Ward 28. I want to start by saying that I have no intention of running in the 2018 municipal election. Additionally, I do not have a political agenda. I have no intention of deviating from the late Councillor McConnell's mandate. If appointed, I do intend to keep all staff and stay the course with a focus on serving as an intermediary between the constituents of Ward 28 and the municipal government. I believe it would be unfair to her constituents to pursue a platform or course of action that differs from the one the late elected official was successfully elected on. These constituents do not have an option to elect who's representing them in this appointment, so I believe it's important to be transparent and continue the will of the people in this regard. I do not have experience working directly with the late Councillor McConnell or her office. However, I do follow City Council, and I've watched her many a time speak in various forums. She represented hope in a time where wage disparity is at its highest, where residents of the city are feeling pushed out, where it's becoming almost unaffordable to live in the city. She worked on creating an inclusive community that represented all constituents, irrespective of economic status, religious or political affiliations, age, ethnic background, or sexual orientation. She believed in the strength of diversity. There's a place for everyone in this city, and I believe that she was successful in incorporating these beliefs in her efforts to rebuild Ward 28. She was an inspiration, and I'm sure all of those who've had the privilege to work with her will forever be impacted by her integrity, her dedication, and her tenacity. My beliefs align strongly with those of the late Councillor McConnell. I would like the opportunity to continue on her amazing work, which is a huge task. I don't think anyone here can completely fill her shoes. The best I can do is carry on her mandate, representing the will of her constituents and pursuing their best possible outcomes. A little bit about me. I'm a first-generation Canadian who's lived in Toronto my entire life, specifically in Ward 29, a neighbouring ward. Throughout my career and my life, I've been involved in public service. I participated in various volunteer work as a councillor in training with the City of Toronto Parks and Recreation, with Scarborough and East York Soccer Club as a volunteer, and through various employment positions. I worked with the City Parks and Recreation as a camp councillor, and I've spent over a decade working as a pension analyst with the provincial public sector. I was appointed in July of 2016 as a trustee for a large public sector pension plan where I have a fiduciary responsibility to the membership. My current role, it takes me outside of public sector employment. I am now employed by a major labour union supporting provincial public servants with their benefit insurance and pension disputes. In the last few years, I've been more directly involved in supporting members through their adversities, championing labour and workers' rights through my role as a union steward, challenging workplace policies that adversely impact members, defending and supporting members through individual labour issues within the workplace, and most recently working to support members with their benefits, long-term disability, and pension challenges, acting as an intermediary between members and their employer, between members and their insurers, and between members and various government program representatives. Specifically, I work to ensure that those who are not in the best position to advocate for themselves have a voice in the decision that impact these benefits. This public appointment provides a very unique opportunity to extend that passion beyond a specific member group and advocate, support, and assist our larger group of individuals, some of which are the most marginalized in our city. This fact is what appeals to me the most about this specific ward. I'd like to be there for the constituents, building on my experience acting as an intermediary for my members and extending that experience to best serve the constituents. While I do not have direct experience working or living in Ward 28, I do believe this to be an advantage. It allows me to objectively execute the late councillor's mandate without having any biases that could arise from personal constituent concerns. I've witnessed so much positive change within this ward, and I'd like the opportunity to continue on with the late Councillor McConnell's work. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Okay, thank you. So we'll recess to 2 o'clock. Thank you.